A very good afternoon and welcome to everybody from a sunny Johannesburg. It is such a wonderful occasion to welcome you here on International Women's Day. This is an ideal opportunity for us to create even more wonderful memories. University of Johannesburg and Shared Value Africa Initiative have been working together for a number of years now. Those of you who have been following our work would have seen the groundbreaking report we published last year, and we have been collaborating ever since. We're very happy and we were excited to see that more than 33 countries and 300 participants have registered to join us for this groundbreaking new engagement that we will be having today. I'll be facilitating this session, Corné Davis, Strategic Communication, University of Johannesburg, and I will be gladly introducing you to some of the wonderful speakers we have here today, starting with our opening and welcoming from our chairperson from Shared Value Africa Initiative and Shift Impact, Ms. Immaculata Segua. Welcome, Immaculata. We look forward to your opening.
Thank you very much, Corné. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, everybody that is on this virtual, in this virtual classroom. It is my pleasure to welcome you and say a few words. Thank you very much, Corné. As we mark the important day and milestone of International Women's Day, where we really celebrate the achievement, the resilience, the being resolute of women across the globe and on our continent, it is befitting that we would host a session of this nature addressing our SDG number 5 of gender equality. We know that throughout history, the marginalization of women in particular, leading to gender-based violence incidences, has really deterred economic progress and development of many nations. Women are today marking International Women's Day and rewriting history in this regard. I've taken the honor of opening up with a few words as the chairperson of the SVAI, and to say that as we stop and pause and honor this day, we celebrate locally on our continent and globally and across the board, as far and as wide as our borders go, the celebration of women on this special day. This critical dialogue, which is driven in partnership with our hashtag It's Not Okay, our Shared Value Africa Initiative, and in partnership with the University of Johannesburg, has really redefined history in terms of the research that has been put behind the gravitas and the credibility of the numbers and staggering stats that we're about to hear, but more importantly, tapping into the minds of our young youth and particularly students in sharing the diversity of views and lived experiences as experienced through their lens on various university campuses. So in collaboration, we thank the University of Johannesburg that has been our partner throughout and since the formation of It's Not Okay in 2020 to really redefine a pillar that is critical to the sustainability of all of our SDGs. What better volume to dial up than to actually hear the voices of our youth? I'm actually attending a summit myself, also celebrating International Women's Day, where we've had robust conversations around the fact that amongst many factors, the average age of leadership on the African continent is 65, and yet the average age of the population is 20, talking to the very gap that we've got to bridge in embracing and including our youth in this rigorous and robust conversation around how to shift the dial on this SDG. Your lived experience on and off campus with regards to the safety of women and the marginalization of women and other issues, including forced marriages in some of our countries, where LGBTQI rights are not even recognized in some of our countries, and the lived realities of women in the workplace not earning enough or equal pay to their male counterparts in the workplace. All of these issues driving the agenda that we've got to put action and impact behind all of our efforts in recognizing the work that has to be done in the space. I welcome you all and wish that the deliberations, the content that has been put together, and all the activities that are across all of our continent and all of our young people through this rigorous and important conversation with our university counterparts must light the path and focus all our channel all of our efforts across all that we've got to do around GBV. I would like to hand over back to you, Corné, and wish all the members of the panel and all the contributors to today's deliberations a good and robust debate. And again, wishing everybody, especially the people put together this afternoon and the deliberations and the preparations behind this much needed discussion and learning and opportunity to exchange views. Wishing you all well and a great afternoon. Back to you, Corné, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for that, Immaculata. Unfortunately, our Dean, Professor Camilla Naidu, could not make it to this meeting, but she has been so kind as to send us Professor Ntabiseng Motseme to welcome you all and to discuss the purpose of our engagement with you from the Faculty of Humanities at University of Johannesburg. Over to you, Prof. Motseme.
Good afternoon, everybody, and what a wonderful day it is. It's International Women's Day. It's a day to celebrate who we are as women all over the world. And it's a day for everybody. Women's Day is for everybody. We mustn't forget that. And we bring along everybody in this great fight and a militant fight against gender-based violence in particular, and towards the equality and empowerment of women all over the world. It's just a wonderful pleasure to be representing Prof. Camilla Naidu, who I know was itching to be here because this is her thing. This is her area of interest and focus. Professor Camilla Naidu, as you know, is the Dean of Humanities at the University of Johannesburg. And she requested that I open this collaborative event between the UJ Strategic Communications Department and Shared Value Africa Initiative. International Women's Day, I just want to highlight, the importance of which I think the previous speaker has already spoken to, but I want to also bring to the fore and emphasize why it matters, why is it significant, and why, and what should we be doing in particular today. First and foremost, International Women's Day is critical because it's a time in which we just celebrate who we are. In spite of our differences, and in fact, in all our diversities, we come together and we celebrate ourselves as women. It's also really important as a time to, want to emphasize this idea of pausing and taking stock of where we are with regards to global sustainability, and in particular, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 5, which, as you all know, I hope all you young people are here, Sustainable Development 5, and that it clearly outlines the following: to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls by 2013. That leaves us with not much time. So it also is a day today that we also directly engage with the vast inequalities across the board: race, class, sexuality, gender in particular, that continue to shape our communities in ways that are harmful for both our mental health as well as the structural development of our communities. But coming to today, we know that the issue of gender-based violence it's gone out of crazy proportions. I'm not going to go through the statistics, you know them well. And so together, we also want to bring attention and bring really straight to the spotlight and focus the issue of gender-based violence and how we can really find ways in which, from a bottom-up perspective, from a way of which we live, from our own lived experiences, find solutions to this, what has been termed a second pandemic indeed. And of course, today, most importantly, is about you students today. It's to really bring our young leaders. You are the future. It's to bring you to come and speak openly, to speak frankly, to speak authentically about issues of gender equality and empowerment, and to bring to the focus all of these ills that plague our society that I've spoken about, which are really shaped through the prism of the vast inequalities we continue to live with. So today we want to hear your views. We want to hear them from your hearts. We want to hear them. We want you to speak your mind. This is a platform in which you can speak your mind. And we want to hear about some of the things you think. I was speaking yesterday with Professor Kone about how do you come to the table and bring African solutions to African problems. So let those solutions come from your own lived experience. You can put the textbook aside today and speak from your heart. So we welcome everybody, all our partners that are here today, the hashtag It's Not Okay, the Shared Value Africa Initiative, and of course, I have to welcome also my colleagues, in particular, Professor Konya and Professor Benike, who are driving this really awesome and hopefully what will be a Pan-African movement today, a partnership as well as initiative. It's not an event, it's an initiative. And then, of course, yes, I especially welcome you to today, to our future leaders. And as I say, speak from your minds and hearts, and do enjoy the day as well. Enjoy each other, enjoy sharing, enjoy the dialogue, and enjoy learning from each other as well. And Phambili with Women's Day, and Phambili with Women's Rights are Human Rights. Thank you for giving the humanities a platform, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Prof. Motseme. A good welcome indeed. Now we've got the honor of welcoming our first keynote speaker. A very impressive gentleman with a very long resume, which I'm not going to read you because I know we're limited for time, but I'm happy to welcome Dr. Henry Onukuba from Lagos Business School. And he is going to share his views with us today. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. May I add my voice in wishing all our wonderful ladies and women a happy International Women's Day. I have been asked to speak on a very interesting topic, the importance of listening to the voices of our future leaders, and to speak from the Nigerian perspective. This topic could not have come at a better time than now, when my country, Nigeria, is currently going through a general election. We held the presidential election on February 25, and come next Saturday, March 11, where we hold the state elections. So permit me to speak within the political context of this topic. And since we are celebrating our women today, my focus for this talk will be on our women. Women represent half of the world's employable population. In Nigeria, women make up 49.4% of the country's over 218 million people. However, this near equality in population of women to men is not replicated in the executive positions in the offices. And the situation is much worse in the elective political space. Now, we have 18 registered political parties that are contesting the election in Nigeria. Out of these 18, only one political party fielded a female presidential candidate. Now, we also have a total of 15,307 candidates who are participating in the whole election. Out of that, only 1,553, representing 10.1%, are women. Compared to the figure in 2019, it seems it is getting worse, because in 2019, we had 13%, 3,163. So we have moved from 3,163 women to 1,553 women participating in the election. Nigeria practices a presidential system of government. So we have two national houses of parliament. We have the Senate, the upper chamber, and the House of Representatives, the lower chamber. In these two chambers, there are 469 seats, 360 for the House of Reps and 109 for the Senate. Only 374 women out of a total of 4,223 contestants contested for these National Assembly elections on February 25. Now, some results have been released, and it's even more shocking. The result for the Senate has been released fully, or not fully. There are about 8 results still being expected. So we have 101 Senate seats declared. Only 2 of those Senate seats are going to be occupied by women. And in 2019, we had 8 senators. So we have moved from 8 to 2. Now, We are still expecting the result for the House of Representatives, but it might interest you to note that we have only 13 women in the outgoing House of Representatives out of 360, representing 3.6%. So this development indicates the continuous marginalization of our women in the nation's political space. The few who have had the courage to venture into this male-dominated space are usually intimidated and harassed. I mean, there are viral videos going on in Nigeria of women politicians crying out that their lives were in danger because they attempted to be in the political space. So women face a lot of challenges in the Nigerian political space. Even among the women that are in the space, a good number of them are in their 50s and 60s. So very few of them are young. The young ones are not represented. Unfortunately, I do not see this male domination of the political arena of Nigeria going away very soon. So I think the problem will be with us for a long time. And as long as the men dominate the assembly, they will always kill legislations that will favor the women. Last year, lawmakers in the National Assembly defeated a bill. The bill was titled "An Act to Alter the Provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, to provide special seat for women in the National and State Assembly." That bill was defeated by 108 men voted against it, and 81 voted for it. So the bill was defeated. Why? Because the lawmakers were mostly men. Now, some political parties in Nigeria have what we call the affirmative action, where women are supposed to be guaranteed 35% of elected positions. But this is hardly adhered to. So, but do our women and future leaders have a voice? The answer is yes. Our future leaders, the youth, they have a voice, and they have proven it in Nigeria. In October 2020, the Nigerian youths rose with one voice to protest the high-handedness of the Nigerian police, known as the SARS. SARS is a Special Anti-Robbery Squad. It was a protest against police brutality, against false profiling, maybe because of the way the person dressed or the way his hairstyle was. It was a revolt against extortion, wrong detention, rape, extrajudicial killings. The revolt was unprecedented. It was unprecedented because the youth, for the first time, stood up and they organized themselves. There were no leaders. There were no elders amongst them. They organized themselves. They provided food, water, live music, even medical assistance to the protesters. They held the nation standstill for weeks before the revolt was brutally quelled. Well, the jury is still out there on who sent the army and how many people were killed. But the protests forced the government to disband the offensive SARS and to initiate some policies aimed at addressing some of the ills that caused the protests in the first place. So from all indications, in this political arena, in the current political dispensation, Nigerian youth seem to have a voice. They have put their support, they've backed one particular political party, the Labour Party. And that Labour Party has moved from 0 membership in any of the assemblies, both state and national, to win 12 states out of 36 states of Nigeria in the last election. So the youth have a voice, and women have a voice. But how can they ensure that this voice is heard? Now, my solution will be, in the short time I have, is that I do not see the women fighting this fight alone. Women can begin to win by enlisting men political allies. There are a lot of men out there who are sympathetic to the plight of the women. The country has 93.4 registered eligible voters. Out of that, 44.4 or 47.5% are women. So women have the number, they have the strength. They need to use their voting power to get more women elected and to support men who are favorable to to advancing the political interests of the women. The youth of Nigeria also are powerful. They represent 39.65% of the total eligible voters of Nigeria. 37.06 million youths are registered to vote in this election. And out of that, 9.5 million are first-time voters. So the voices of our youth and our women, the voices of our future leaders are getting stronger. They must use that voice to change what is happening in the political arena in the country. They must wake up to the realization of the fact that they have a lot of power in their voices and that they can only begin to change things when they use that power in such a way to influence what is happening in the political space in the country. I think that's enough time I have. I don't know if I have done justice to the topic. Thank you very much.
We appreciate your contribution, Dr. Henry. It's always good to hear another perspective and to understand how other voices are also important and to listen to a multitude of them. We are fortunate today to have another kind of voice in the room, who is our very own poet at UJ, and he's particularly wrote a poem just for this occasion today. So we are very honored to welcome our poet, Spesihle, and we look forward to hear what you have written for us. We are happy to listen to you.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity. This is a first for me, and I truly appreciate the platform that I've been given today to present this poem that I have written. It is titled, "The Simple Things Aren't So Simple." She feels suffocated. He feels unseen. I feel unheard. In this air we breathe, nothing is ever fair. We've grown so separate, but can we take a step back, reminisce and reflect? Consider this world we've turned to hell, where she screams and finds no hope, where he falls, breaks his bones with no support. At times, she regrets being a woman, but she refuses to wish she was ever a man. She's just hoping she didn't have to shrink, rethink who she is just to make society sane. And he sits, and in the shadows he sits. He resents his image. Ah, the patriarchal stain. I wish this world was better then, where the balance balances out, where she can take walks in the dark and stargaze without fear, where she can go for a drink, have fun without being made to feel weird, where she can wear whatever she wants without the whispers of hurt in her ear. He wishes his broken had a voice, that he had healthy support. Sometimes it's better to joke without the humor. Sometimes it's better to joke, but humor can only hide so much. He hopes to vent without the laughter, to just vent, let it out and just be, to not be seen as too weak, to cry and feel he's free. I want better for us all, hand in hand for a world we can adore. And honestly, that's just one of the goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Spesihle. That was really, truly beautiful. And it's so lovely to hear your voice and how clearly you articulate, you know, the emotions that young people so often feel. And this brings us to the most important part of today's engagement. And the reason we put all of this together was to start listening to the voices of our future young leaders. You know, my career as a gender-based violence activist started through the voices of my students in 2013, when they told their stories of their experiences of gender-based violence in childhood. And it's really students' voices who changed my life and who set me on my path. And I'm sure that many of my fellow academics would share similar stories about how our young people inspire us and keep us going and give us the drive to work with them and to influence curricula so that we can solve problems in this world. So we are very happy to invite our speakers in our roundtable discussion. We asked them to give us their views on what gender equality and gender-based violence looks like from their perspectives. You know, every person in every country has a different experience, and we know that it's important to reach out and to hear other voices so that eventually we can come together as Africans to solve our challenges and our problems. So I'm very happy to introduce you to our speakers in our roundtable discussion this afternoon. We have Kate Mwambo, STEM advocate and CEO of Injured Technologies from State University, Buea in Cameroon. Kate, if you are here. Then we have Jeanette Tapala, who is a master's in strategic communication student under my supervision. So I'm very proud to have Jeanette here. We have June Shimoshili. She's the founder of Unwrap Online, and she's from Namibia. We have Mihle Kembele, second-year student at Cape Peninsula University of Technology, and I'm very happy to see Mihle here because he hails from Eastern Province where I was born. And then we've got Panasha Magadza, also a student at Africa University from Zimbabwe. And then last, we've got Samista Mwaniki from UN Sustainable Development Solutions at Strathmore University in Kenya. So I hope our students managed to join us, if they are all here. Are you all here? Is my student panel all present? Right, I see Jeanette, I see Samita, I see Panashe. Okay, so we don't necessarily have to stick to the running order. We can work with the students who are present. Can I ask Jeanette that you share your stance on how do you see gender equality and the challenges we face with gender-based violence from your South African perspective?
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
You are.
Thank you so much, Prof. I want to start by saying happy International Women's Day. My argument in this topic lies in the mindset of the woman. Yes, we can argue that in South Africa, the government is not doing enough to make sure that women are represented, women obtain seats in the decision-making position, and we can blame on unemployment, lack of skills, illiteracy, marginalization of women. But my argument lies in the mindset of women. We have to know what is it that women think about gender equality, because we understand that usually women in the rural areas, women that are low-income earners, sometimes believe in oppressive ideologies, norms, and theories that make them more marginalized in the community. Do they believe in gender equality? Do they know their worth? Do they believe in empowerment? Do they believe that they can do the same thing that men are doing? Do they know that they are powerful? They can make decisions as much as men can make decisions. So I feel like to change the situation, to ensure that Africa succeed in promoting gender equality, must start with changing the mindset. And how do we change the mindset of this woman? We must start by educating women about the importance of gender equality, the importance of self-empowerment. We should not rely on the government to ensure that the government and the private sector take initiative to ensure that women are represented. Women can be the agent of change by changing their mindset, by taking initiative of self-empowerment to show that as much as men believe that they are powerful, we also believe in ourselves. We believe that if we are taken and we are made to be in power, we can make the same decisions that men make. We cannot be manipulated by men, and we cannot tell men to make decisions in the higher position. So I feel like the best way to achieve gender equality is to change the mindset in order to change the status quo. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Jeanette. We'll continue with that conversation a bit later. May I ask, Mihle, that you share your stance with us from a male perspective in South Africa? It would be interesting to hear your views.
Okay, good day. Morning to my fellow constituaries, morning to my fellow panel. Greeting to you, Mrs. Davis. Yeah, simple introduction about who Mihle is. Okay, Mihle is a young man born and raised in Cape Town, but whose parents are originally from the Eastern Cape. Yes, Mihle can speak a variety of languages. He's a Xhosa by descent. So yeah, Mihle is, while he grew up, he was always fascinated by society and who people is as a people, as a culture, as a tradition. But as growing up in the early 2000s to the late 2000s right now, I've sort of seen the digress of what society has done to women and children in general, which brings me to my topics today that we are speaking about as a panel, as a group. But initially, before I start, I would like to say a happy International Women's Day to all the women out there, all the Khawes, all the Imbogodos, City Salute. But we have to table the discussion, and the discussion being the war against women and children, which brings me to my first point. What is gender-based violence? Gender-based violence is basically the harmful acts that would be done upon one gender or prioritizing the power that one gender has over the other. The case in point that in South Africa, we are the rape capital of the world. I think it was Dr. Rachel Jukes who said that she's also a leader of the WWP movement, which has anti-gender-based violence movements in 13 countries. And these projects are built in case to stop gender-based violence. She said that from all the cases in South Africa from July to September last year, 9,556 cases were reported of women actually raped, right? That means 1 in 4 women are raped every single day, which is astonishing. Which is astonishing for me because I have friends from all over the world and I cannot curb them to come over to this country because like they are in fear, right? As a young man, it is putrid for me to grow up in a society where I fear for my mother's life, my sisters, my brothers out there who are losing their lives, right, to this gender-based violence. And it is an atrocity, it is against our human rights, right? But I am a firm believer in God because I was, my parents are pastors. So they gave me all the laws of God that have set me on the right-hand path. And like, whenever I see these atrocities happening on women, I just feel that I wish I could have done more, which is why I think God has allowed us to be here, you know, to table the discussion, to be the future leaders, right? My second point that I would like to bring up is what is gender inequality? Gender inequality is basically the discrimination, right, of another gender, right? Prioritizing this gender to be higher than the next, right? Which basically means the common case is men getting paid more, right, and women earning less. Did you know that in South Africa, 51.1% of the entire population are women? And of that 51.1%, 42%, right, of those women, right, are leaders of their households, meaning there's a lot of single children being raised by single mothers, right? And then globally, that is the stat that women are more than males. But we still, in South Africa, continue to commit genocide, to murder an entire gender of people, right? Which is not the case. And the solution should be that we need to table the discussion and say that we are equal as man and woman, right?
Thank you.
Whatever women can do.
Thank you for that, Mihle. I'm going to continue asking you more about that point. Let me just let our other two speakers introduce themselves. We'll continue just now. And may I ask, Panache, that you open your statement about your view, your perspective? Panache, you're on mute.
Afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Panashe Magata and I am a first year student at Africa University. My views on the aspect of gender equality really stem from the idea that I feel it has to be a collective effort. I feel there aren't enough men involved in this movement for gender equality, because too often people tend to make gender equality seem like it's something that's only driven by women, it's something that's only promoted by women. And in reality, it is the case that there are more women encouraging gender equality, fighting for gender equality. And even if you see it, and if you look at most panels such as this one, there are less men than there are females, simply because people think gender equality is a fight for the women, but it really isn't. Because at the end of the day, gender equality is something we're fighting for both ends, from both genders. The women want equal rights and the men want equal rights. The more we let women fight these battles alone, the more research has actually shown that women tend to progress a lot more than men, simply because they're now getting more rights than the men are actually getting, as a matter of fact. So you find that even when there are situations where there are scholarships or job opportunities, because of certain quotas that are now being established for gender equality and wanting to include women in businesses, include women in better schools and to get a better education, you find that there are specific requirements where they say you cannot apply unless you are female, of which at the end of the day, when this continues to go progressively, you find that women are now overtaking the men. Research has shown that the men are being left behind. And at the end of the day, you find, even as mentioned earlier, in situations of politics, parliament, there are less women in parliament than there are men. But we need to understand that we don't want to force ourselves into parliament through quotas, because quotas is more of, it's integration in a forceful manner, when we need to persuade people to actually want to include women because they are competent, not because they are women, not because we want to theoretically put in the fact that we're including women in the conversation. And yes, we have included women in politics, but we want to include women because they are competent. And the only way for us to include women because they're competent is if the men realize that we are competent. And if the men step in and the men say, no, we understand that women can contribute to this. So it's a fight where, as much as women want to fight for women's rights, men have to fight for the women's rights as well. But they must not only fight for the women's rights, but they must fight for their own rights, because gender equality is something we need to do together. As the poet said earlier, we need to do it hand in hand. And the only way we can do that is if more men get involved in this and more men are encouraging this, and women and men are creating partnerships where they can assist each other. Because at the end of the day, if the men are left behind, the women then are no longer in coalition with the men, and it becomes a situation where the genders are against each other in order to compete. And we're not asking to compete, we're just asking for equal platforms. We want gender equity. We want to be able to have the same rights, have the same opportunities together, not women to have more opportunities than men, not men to have more opportunities than women. So I think my stance in this topic is really that more men should be involved in helping the women and themselves. Because you find even men's stigmatization is a big thing for men, and that kind of goes against what we're fighting for when it comes to gender equality. So we're not trying to fight gender equality through discrimination, where we're now saying if you're a man, you cannot apply for this, it's only applicable for women. So that's my stance mainly on this topic, that we all need to do this collectively, hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Panashe. And now we're going to introduce our last speaker, Samita. Shall we hear what you are thinking?
Shalom, everyone. I am already so excited to be in this space, already really excited to hear all the ideas that I hear. And honestly, I would say that in Kenya, it's such a big issue, mainly because now it's kind of shifted. The entire conversation has actually shifted to it just being a women's movement, just as Panashe has said. And I echo that whole idea of gender equity not being about just a women's conversation, but also the men. And I've realized that majority of the opportunities here in Kenya, majority of the businesses, majority of the celebrations that happen in day-to-day is mostly towards women. Like even if you look at today, Happy International Women's Day, by the way, sorry, should have started with that. But if you look like already in Kenya, the billboards, everything in terms of how much money you can get, financial support, government support, it's only towards women. And I think that's crazy. Because what I've learned in my journey towards research in gender equity, is that I can't only read from articles. I can't just get my information from research, neither what statistics affirm. It's mostly about what I need to do as an individual to actually combat gender equity and start the conversation of gender equity in my day-to-day life. Because I've learned that this conversation is way bigger than me. It's way bigger than education. It's way bigger than finances. It's way bigger than the men. Because if it does not begin with me educating myself, understanding that I have the power as an individual to actually have this conversation about gender equity with my own father or with any other man who I may feel like is not, is not with this whole conversation. Also, some women who don't support other women. So what am I doing to address this issue? I quickly learned that actually standing up for equity is such an important aspect of combating inequalities which currently exist in my day-to-day life, just within university. It's as simple as me talking about it, living it, and not talking about it in silence or living it in silence, but really speaking up anything that I feel, even if it's for my fellow men, and say, what do you feel about this? The fact that you do not have representation in this university, the fact that you do not have representation in other spaces that you should, what does it look like? It's bigger than it just being the statistics. It's bigger than us having this conversation. And I think we've talked enough. I generally think we have talked so much, but we haven't acted enough on it. I often ask myself, what does an Africa with equity look like? Do I have to wait to be liberated, or do I have to liberate myself? Because this is something that just keeps going and going and going. And it's true, it's not okay for us to be talking about this in the 21st century at first. It's not okay for us to be talking about it in free lands, which our forefathers have fought so hard for, spaces that other women have fought so hard for, other men have fought so hard for. So it's about humanity. It's about you as a person. What is your personality? What are you?
Thank you for that, Samita. I think we must
About it. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Samita. I'm going to ask a question which you can answer, but I also just want to turn to the floor. We have several students here. If any of you wanted to say something, that you can just raise your hand to see if we can accommodate your view as well. It seems to me, if I listen to what all of you are saying, that there are very similar experiences in these very different countries. I see we have a hand up. We've got two hands up. Can we just allow our visitors to just say something? Let's listen to Odama. Joel, you wanted to say something?
Sir?
Yes, thank you so much. Mine is an encounter. I'm a member of the Rotary Club, and we were addressing the boy child. You find out that people have focused so much on the women, and the boy child has been frustrated, and you find out they are lagging in criminal places. You find out they're falling in for drug abuse, while the women are out there in the parlors, enjoying the space, doing their makeup, their fingertips and everything. But the boy child, a number of them are going to prison, a number of them are dropping out of school, and that's exactly what has happened. So addressing these two issues is everyone who is well off. There are boy children who are actually successful, and they have hit the competition of the women's space out there, and they have cut them. But many of them have not had this chance. So striking the balance, the main focus is us to go back down and find out exactly who are these vulnerable people. Because you cannot give a rich woman or a rich man advice today, because they are in control. They have the resources, they can allocate them, and they can pay up all their bills. But when you're interested in helping the community, you find out who is vulnerable, who is the target group out there. So the target group is the one that you lay a focus on, lay structures on how you're going to pull them out of this diaspora. Yeah, so basically that's what we shared. So I thought we would share that as well.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give a chance for Mokodi Mokwatle to say a word.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mokodi, and I'm a visitor. I'm a student at Wits who's currently doing his honors in civil and environmental engineering. And I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm not an expert as when it comes to gender equality, but the reason why I came here is to actually learn more about this. Just to highlight, I've recently opened my company and I've called out for volunteers. And most of the volunteers, you find that it's 90% males and you only find about 10% females. And when a company starts to grow, there needs to be a gender balance. So in my company, I've requested that we have 50% male and 50% female. But then how do I then continue to proceed to employ 50% male and 50% females, let's say, for instance, the executives? How do I then have women in the executive team if I do not have women actually taking initiatives and actually being involved in such things? And I think to the last speaker who spoke about the boy child, I think it's about time also that as a country, we start focusing on the boy child, because the boy child has been neglected so much. And you can see most problems that are actually articulated by gender equality actually stem from the boy child. So if we actually educate the boy child to become a good leader in society, I feel like we'll be addressing some of the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We're going to give one more speaker a chance before we return back to our panel, and that's Christina Ozuaru. Christina.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to thank the speakers all along. I've been enjoying the meeting. But there's something somebody said, using the collective approach. Like a speaker from Nigeria, actually bringing the concept of the politics that is being played in Nigeria and the gender aspect. But for me, I thought that our culture is one of the things that is actually bridging this issue of gender equity. Because the way we bring up our boy child actually contributes to the inequality or inequity in the system. If we can bring in the issue of gender equity, bringing up our boy child to understand that a man's world and a girl child and a boy child, they are being created equally, and they have equal rights to whatever they want to do. That will help a long way to change the mindset of the male in the society, to understand that the woman also has is also the same folk, just the way they are, that whatever a man can do, a woman can equally do that perfectly. Like the issue of politics. The politics in Nigeria is always the man's word. Even the timing of their meeting does not permit a woman to actually mainstream into that politics. But if a wave such approach of making the family to actually bring up children equally, making them to understand that we are all the same creatures, not making the man to always assume that is the head or is higher than the woman, it will go a long way to change the mindset of people concerning the issue of gender equity, and to also understand that we need to do things 50-50. Nobody is higher than the other. So the issue of our culture, the culture is where we need to root this, our argument, or root our energy to mainstreaming our argument to cultural background of the people, so that from the home, the issue of equity is being mainstreamed into the upbringing of children. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Great. We agree where we're coming from. I think we're all on the same page with regards to we are being born equal, we should be brought up equal, although we know this is not actually happening in our society. I don't know if you are aware, for example, if you look at the figures, say for something as child marriage, do you know that you still have approximately 30,000 little girls aged sometimes as young as 12 getting legally married across the world daily, each day? You know,
Yes.
so I mean that speaks to the extent to which we are not seeing equality yet. But I want to ask you as the young leaders who are in a position of higher education where you can take leadership, what do you think should be done from your perspective to change things in your countries? We have a limited time, but I would like you to come forward and answer it from your perspective, what you think, how you can work together, even across the different countries, and establish platforms for you to engage and to brainstorm together, since you are the future leaders. But what are your suggestions? What should be done for us to get to this equality and the reduction of violence, particularly against women? Floor's open to the panel.
Hello, can I start?
Mihle, you start.
Thank you, thank you. All right, my solution to all this, ma'am, is basically, it's the way I was speaking on earlier. It's re-educating and rethinking and re-injecting good doctrinations in the youth of today. Because in South Africa, we were the rape capital like 13 years ago, and we still are today. So it means nothing has changed. And why is that? Because it's the lack of knowledge, right? So I believe that with knowledge, good doctrination in schools, in bringing the men in, the fathers, working in groups and projects, starting from home, because this is where it starts out with this gender-based violence and this gender inequality. It starts at home, how we as a society, as males, see ourselves, right, in the spectrum of gender. So we need to start at home, start in our communities, be the voice, be the changes, be the leaders of tomorrow, right? We need to implicate, we need to bring forth new doctrine and say, hey, it is not okay for you to be marrying that girl. She's too young. It is not okay for you to date her. It is not okay for you to walk in that manner. We need to be inclusive, loving to one another. And also, let's not alienate God and his beliefs, because if you look at all the countries that actually have a God or deity that they believe in, the rape percentages is really low. If you look at a country like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and why is that? It's because their beliefs and the laws are being taught from a very young age. So I believe if we can inject God and knowledge and good doctrination of like schools and people and who we are as a society, we can have a greater tomorrow as a panel, as a youth, as the future of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mihle. Jeanette, can I ask you, what would you say? What would your thoughts be about what can be done as young leaders to change the scenario?
Thank you so much, Prof. To add on what the previous speaker has said, I believe that the best way to liberate women from gender inequality, from marginalization, from GBV, is to educate women, especially women in the rural areas, to educate them about the importance of self-worth, believing in yourself, that you can be as equal as men. You can undertake career path as equal as men. You can make decisions. So I feel like in South Africa, mostly the problem is lack of knowledge, not being educated, not knowing the importance of this equality, the importance of being on par with men. So I feel like the best way to deal with gender inequality is to educate women, to invest in education. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeanette. Panashe, what are your views?
I think similarly to what Jeanette has just said, you find that in my country, in Zimbabwe particularly, customary law would say a child could get married at a very young age, but we follow constitutional law to begin with. Constitutional law is the law that we follow. And in the constitution, it states that you cannot marry a child until she is 18. But you find in rural areas, the women don't know their own rights. So there's need for not just general education, but education of their rights, because when they look at it, they don't see any other life for themselves other than marrying whoever it is who's offering their hand, because they don't know where to go from here. This is the life that they have. So we need to come up with more foundations to get the ladies in the rural areas to be educated so that they realize they could have a life of their own, and that marrying someone is not the way that they can continue life, because as is, that's the life they see for themselves, and they don't see any other life for themselves.
I agree with you. That is often the case. You know, we've also found in our study, I mean, education has always been a big gap, that people are not aware of their rights, they're not aware of the statistics, especially if you look at the issue of gender-based violence, for example, where more than 90% of cases are never reported. The topic is stigmatized, therefore it's not reported, therefore victims feel isolated, and they don't realize how many of them are actually victims or they don't even know what they're experiencing is some kind of gender-based violence. So this kind of education is important, but where would you think this education should, some of you said in the home, do you think there's a gap to bring it more into our educational curricula? I see your hand, Joel. Would you want to add something before we continue?
Sorry to interrupt, Madam Davis. I wasn't able to speak on the same idea of what I think we should do. So I understand that the whole thing of education is equally important, but also like to bring about the idea of sensitization and as well as conversations about these issues. Like I would say in Kenya, we have a really big problem with FGM as well as sexual coercion of young adolescents. So these are conversations that culture generally shies away from. Education is there. Education is high. It's fantastic here in Kenya. But I would say education towards addressing these issues is what is more important, because you can be aware, but are you educated enough to actually fight for yourself if given the chance? Are you going to have that confidence? Are you going to have, when you're given that space, you can say, this happened to me and I'm not happy with it? Because laws and as well as education is very important, but also that sensitization of understanding what is FGM actually doing to you? What is sexual coercion actually doing to you as a young child? And also bringing in the men to this conversation, because yes, it's true, culture is such a big problem, as well as religion can be used to manipulate young minds. But having that conversation with young people to understand really what is this that you're being led into? Is it okay that this is happening to you? And for them to understand that it's not okay, then they can be in a position of actually being more empowered to say, this happened to me, it's not right. Exactly. It's just the same way how most movements start. It's me saying, I'm not okay with this. It's you saying, I'm not okay with it. Because if you look at the population in Africa, we're all young and God has blessed us with that. And imagine if every young person can be able to talk about this, not from the perspective of just a woman as well as a man. So I think we all need to also think about that perspective.
Yes, the empowerment to speak out, to feel that your voice will be heard. So everybody needs to work towards making sure that young people's voices are heard. We are going to run out of time soon. I'm going to listen to what you were saying, Joel, because your hand was up before I saw Samita's hand. You had something to add.
Yes, if you're to relate that to business, you find out that in business, there are those informal businesses that are not registered. And they become very, very, very bad to the business environment, into the way they invest, the products that they sell. So when you bring that down to the males and females, even biology has it that a man cannot do without a woman, because there's no production. The gay have come, the lesbians have come, but there's no production. It's just bringing a mess. It's all over the church. It's all over the social media and everything. So the most important thing is to see how to formalize the man-woman relationships from the grassroots. Because when a child is born today and the child goes through trauma, that is going to be her timeline. She's going to hate everyone ahead of her because she has been rooted to this here. So this has to be addressed from the grassroots. It has to be pulled out, because any space that tolerates it is going to make it grow.
Correct.
Yeah,
and we know, for example, that, even some of these kinds of inequalities have been linked to religious dogma, that we need to change the way that it maybe could be related to patriarchy, that could be related to the subordination of women that has been happening through the various decades. Christina, I'm going to give you a few seconds to say something, and then we need to hear the key message from each one of our panelists to move forward, that we can continue finding solutions together. Over to you, Christina, and then to our panel members.
Okay. Everybody's saying education, education, education. What type of education are we talking about? Because we know that most of these things start from the grassroots. Most of the women there, even gender is not only about women. So men too are also part of the gender issue. What type of education are we talking about? To me, I think the non-formal aspect of the education, because there are some women that are not educated, they've not been to school, still they know their rights. So not really people that have gone to school, the formal type of education, the non-formal aspect something like advocacy. If people can advocate, people can come together, people can form a forum whereby you go to the grassroots, talk to people, because this thing is embedded in our culture. And there are non-formal education programs that are cultural related, cultural education, family life education. We use such medium to actually create the awareness in people to know that these are culture. We need to change it. This has to be built in so that as we are bringing up our children, mostly the mothers will start from the home. Based on the awareness they have gotten through the non-formal education program, it will help to go a long way. Not really for one to be highly educated. Education, fine, but the type of education we'll choose will actually go a long way to solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Christiana. Well, what we also have to bear in mind, students and panelists, is we have been talking about gender equality globally for decades. For decades. There have been programs established. There have been a lot of education. We've had the Women Empowerment Principles. We've got United Nations Women. We have all kinds of incentives, even in the business industry, to promote gender equality. And we can see that it's still a long way to go. It's not as if we can see definitive results. I mean, how many countries? I think there were 4 or 5 countries that were at the top towards achieving gender equality. And in those, we were saying still elementary concept, which is, it's big in terms of the pay gap, but we're still talking about equal pay. We're still not talking about equal rights. I go back to what I said to you earlier, for example, about child marriage. Then we're talking about other issues, for example, as in unpaid labor, where you still get that cultural component to which some of you alluded to, where you still have gender roles, gender stereotyping that's happening. So if we want to see progress as and now we're speaking as specifically as Africans, because it's an African university's focus today, how can we actually progress and accelerate progress by working together? I'm trying to find among you ideas of how can you connect with each other to brainstorm about addressing these issues in the different countries. What suggestions can you have to bring yourselves together to engage so that you can actually mobilize? Otherwise it becomes, good intentions like it has been for decades. What can we do to mobilize this more, to see more action happening, is what I'm looking for. If any of you in this panel can think about that, and just because we've got about another 10 minutes or so to go. So what ideas can you bring forward to say, how can you collaborate to accelerate equality in Africa particularly? That's a tough question. You have 3 seconds to think about it and give me an answer.
Oh, 3 seconds, okay.
I want to hear your ideas here. We want to share your ideas to achieve something, to see something that can make a difference. That's not just thinking. Nambi, we've got another contribution on the floor. What would you suggest?
Hi, thank you very much. This is Professor Namdi Madiche from University of Kigali. Events like this need to be more regular. We don't have to wait for 1 year. 8th of March, every 8th of March we gather. It should also be embedded into the curriculum. I teach my students, even if the SDGs are not part of the curriculum, I bring it in one way or the other, embed it in the curriculum for university students. And finally, in terms of community engagement, for those that are not fortunate enough to be at universities, outreach. That's something I keep talking about because the emphasis of SDG 5 seems to be imbalanced. I think one of the speakers mentioned about forgetting the other half of gender. He for she, that's a mantra. He for she needs to be co-creational. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to, can I just allow, before we have the 1 minute wrap up, I would like to give an opportunity to Mhloti Vuma to just say a word, and then our speakers can wrap up.
Thanks, Corne. And afternoon to everyone on the call. From my side, I think we've got an implementation issue. I think we've got all the plans and everything, like you said, you know, we've had this for years. But the issue is around implementation. I think we're still relying on governments to sort of implement everything. And I guess that's where the shifting needs to happen. You know, it needs to go to the advocacy groups, you know, the activists, sorry, those are the people that need to be, or rather, we need to be the ones driving those, you know, those changes. And it's through collaboration and a collective effort that we would be able to achieve this. I mean, the universities can start, you know, from the private side to collaborate amongst themselves, you know, to realize, or rather to accelerate that. I think it's time we stop relying on government. If we are to see any changes in the SDGs, government will just be, you know, a support structure and not the implementer.
Thank you very much, Mhloti. Now I'm going to ask my panel of speakers to wrap up. Samita, you can start, then Mihle, then Panashe, and then Jeanette. Please, a quick last thought to the audience.
Thank you so much for this space once again. And I think I'll just still stick with what I said. We have read statistics, we've read the journal articles, we know we've researched, and you know, some of us maybe have also experienced it, but we've talked enough. We just need to act, because sometimes when we read all these things, have all this information, we could have information indigestion, because you don't get time to ask yourself, what can I do to actually drive this change? What can I do to understand my people, my culture, other African cultures, and understand the spaces which I can work in? Because the youth, we've been given so many opportunities, countless opportunities, and we are the leaders of today, not tomorrow, of today. And with that responsibility, we can't just talk about equity. We need to live equity, we need to breathe equity, because that's the only other way we can be able to inspire someone else to live that way. Because just as I asked earlier when I began, do I have to wait to be liberated, or do I need to liberate myself? Because we're not going to have this conversation keep on going on a seesaw. Because now one time it's going to be about women, the other time it's going to be about men. But we need to achieve that equity, because we are all humans, and humanity, when we talk about human rights, it's for all. It's not for just the women. It's also for, I mean, neither is it just for the men. It's for all women, and that balance can be achieved. So by us empowering each other, by us being responsible and stepping up, and stop blaming other people, stop blaming the governments, because we are the change. We are the change that we need to see. And I hope that this space inspires all of us to actually do what we must do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samita. Thank you very much. Mihle, your wrap up?
Okay, ma'am. My wrap up has to do with three main solutions that I have researched and come up with. Number one being re-education. And I saw there was a question earlier, what type of education? You can't be just formal education. No, formal education is a factor, yes, but we're talking about physical, going at the source, because this is a problem that's been around for years, so we need to cut it off at the root. So it means going in at the communities, you know, and since we're in the 21st century, we have digital works. We cannot just rely on the government, because the government is bound, but we need to use something that is boundless, meaning our computers, our cell phones, our apps, our social media. Starting my own, like me, I've actually had a plan to start my own website, right, my own platform, right? And then my second is mental health and activism, where I'll be speaking, going to communities, bringing in my brothers, my daughter, the men, because we need to shine. We can't just read stats and just sit back. We need to be the change we want to see. So in wrap up, we need to implement this. We need to start today. We can't let this continue on for another 10 years and then come speak again here. We need to invigorate the masses. We need to start like our own apps, like to stop the sexualization of young children, because any child, it's so easy for children to access things that are not good for them or good for their mind right now. If we can build apps, if we can build things that can mitigate that, and then put more apps that promote human rights awareness, you know, all of those things, gender-based violence, all of these anti-things, and we need to start today, not tomorrow, together. I love you all.
Siyabonga, siyabonga. Very nicely said, Mihle. We need more young men with passion like you. We can do this together. Jeanette, your wrap up?
Hi, Prof. To wrap up, I would like to say that we must invest not only in formal education. We must establish uncomfortable conversation about gender-based violence, about gender inequality, and to re-emphasize on autonomy and self-empowerment, and not to only depend on government and private sector to help us with the initiative of gender inequality and gender-based violence. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think that wraps up our panel discussion, and we're going to take notes. And after this event, we're definitely going to take steps to keep you all in touch with each other and to create platforms where you can engage more. This has been truly a remarkable discussion. We hope to facilitate far more engagement such as this so that we can mobilize and empower and educate and get other academics to all agree that we're writing this into our curricula, that we empower our students with knowledge to change the world. I'm going to hand over to the CEO of Shared Value Africa Initiative, Tiki Barnard, to wrap up this and close and say the final words. And from my side, thank you to everybody for your contribution, for your presence. It's been an absolute pleasure engaging with you, and we hope to see you again in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Corné. And I just want to say to everybody that's here today, thank you for being here. I think, you know, we as the Shared Value Africa Initiative and the It's Not Okay movement believe in giving the young people a platform to raise their voices, because we have to hear what the young leaders are saying out there, because they are building the future. So for us, it's been very, very important and to link the equity and the gender equality. And Samita, I loved what you were saying, is that we have to take action. That's what we have to do one by one. So if we go away today, what I also want to say is we've got a really great relationship with the University of Johannesburg, with Corné and Prof. Corné and Prof. Rene, but please, we want to engage with other universities. You know, so please reach out. It is at info@shiftimpact.africa, because we want to, I think as Corné said in the beginning, we want to take this movement forward with all of the universities. So the next one, I was joking with Dr. Henry, I said the next one we're doing is in Nigeria, you know, and yes, the dream is one day to take this you know, African Universities Gender Equality Forum and do a huge event, and we get all the universities together so that all of our young people can show us what they've done. So go out today. My call to action on all of you today is to please go out and do something that you you know, that you feel will make a difference in the life of somebody else that's really struggling from a gender-based violence perspective or from a gender equality perspective. And I want to say to Odama Joel, and I also want to say, I can't remember the other gentleman who said he got men only to come into his business. Go out there and look for the women, because they are definitely there. They might have just been a little bit scared, or maybe you know, when they got your brief on who you were looking for, they weren't quite sure. So please go out there and look for the women, because they are definitely there. And I want to say thank you, everybody. And we would love to have you at our next forum, because, you know, we're going to continue this conversation with universities. So please engage with us, email us, let us know if you want to be part of it, so that we can make it happen. And I believe in the power of the collective. So if we stand together, we can make it happen. And thank you, everybody. And thank you, Corné. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to you, Jay. You know, it's always great to work together towards change. Thank you very much. And thank you, Lolo, at the back from a technical perspective. We now have to play, sorry, I forgot, the UCT video. UCT couldn't be with us today, but they've supplied a video for us, you know, to show us what they're doing from at UCT from a gender equality perspective. So I'm sorry, Lolo, I forgot about that. So please, can you play the UCT video for us? And then thank you again, everybody, for being here.
Transforming Energy Access works via partnerships to support emerging clean energy generation technologies, productive appliances, smart networks, energy storage, and much more. It increases access to clean, modern energy services for people and enterprises in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, improving their lives, creating jobs, and boosting green economic opportunities. In 2018, the T-Learning Partnership started a partnership of African universities committed to delivering professional African graduates ready to drive the continent's transition to sustainable energy access for all. Work Package 1 focuses on capacity building for master students. Work Package 2 focuses on the capacity building for professionals. The last Work Package, Work Package 3, aims to continue building the network of Southern expertise. The Future Females in Energy program, offered in partnership by the African Management Institute and the University of Cape Town, will provide a program which includes a combination of technical, managerial, and soft skills training content. The aim of the program is to equip and prepare women in entry-level and junior positions to grow into leadership positions in the energy sector. The program will benefit women already in the sector with identified leadership potential. This formal certificate program would aim to fast-track the career development and progression of women in the energy sector. Our target for the Future Females in Energy program is to train 300 women over a 3-year period. We will be looking for women between the ages of 20 and 35 who have been working in the energy sector for 1 to 2 years, but who are not yet managing a team. The program will be offered in English and online with pre-recorded sessions which can be done when convenient.
Thank you, everybody. And I wish you a blessed afternoon and a really great weekend when it comes along. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Great to see you.
Bye so much.
Bye. Thanks, Taki.
Bye to everyone.
Your